The termination of SCP-682 is top priority, and 682 is called the hard-to-destroy reptile for a reason, because it has survived dozens of termination attempts. But what about facing 682 against an anomaly that calls itself God, the creator of all things? Can SCP-343 destroy 682? In this video, we try to answer this question. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel with notifications on so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and we will be exploring more 682 termination attempts in the future. Let's begin by quickly introducing the opponent. SCP-343, nicknamed God by Foundation employees, is an old, seemingly raceless man that cannot be described exactly because his detailed features are different to each observer. 343 was discovered walking around Prague and was witnessed disappearing from the streets and reappearing on a rooftop. Foundation personnel then apprehended the man, but luckily, SCP-343 willingly allowed to be contained, and we say luckily because its ability to teleport would make a forceful containment impossible. Once in custody, the man was interviewed, aiming to uncover more about his origin, but he didn't reveal anything about his backstory. Instead, SCP-343 claimed to be the creator of the universe, and when asked to prove this, he walked through the wall of the containment chamber and returned seconds later with a hamburger in his hand. But SCP-343 is not only capable of phasing through solid matter and teleporting, but the man can also affect the things around him. This is because on more than one occasion, 343 has changed the size and the style of his containment chamber. Also, this god seems to have a broad knowledge of all topics and greatly enjoys speaking with other people, which is likely the reason why he has allowed to be contained. Due to the friendly nature of SCP-343 and the knowledge gained from each questioning, visiting the entity has been left open, and many Foundation personnel choose to talk to the god on a daily basis. These researchers also report feeling generally happier after each visit. Also, the O5 Council has tried to restrict access to SCP-343 to staff level 3 clearance and above, but this proved unsuccessful. This was because all guards assigned to watch the room simply quit their posts, saying, "You know he likes company." So, as we see, SCP-343 claims to be God, the creator of everything, and the man is a very powerful reality bender, meaning that if we put him against SCP-682, he should definitely be a threat towards the reptile. However, not too many people know that SCP-343 and 682 have actually interacted in the SCP Wiki before. In an SCP tale called Tales from the Bright Side, the O5 Council comes to the realization that SCP-343 has been kept in containment for years, but has yet to prove itself worth the effort. As such, Dr. Bright asks him to help the Foundation by terminating a very dangerous creature. And after a short exchange of words, 343 agrees, without asking any questions, and seemingly confident that whatever it is, he can deal with it. SCP-343 enters the testing chamber, 682 is released, and the reptile roars into the room, charging straight towards the opposing door in an attempt to escape. But in doing so, SCP-682 passes straight through the god without touching him at all. In return, the god continues to stare at the open door. In fact, he even looks at the scientists overseeing the chamber and says, "Are you going to send this thing out, or should I head in?" In the meantime, one of the researchers, Dr. Sammet, is staring at the video feed, mouth wide open. Dr. Bright takes the microphone and asks 343 if he can't see anything, and the god confirms this. As such, Bright reports that SCP-682 is not neutralized, and when 343 hears this, he says, "682, you brought me to 682. The doctor responds, "Sure did. Got a problem with that." But in return, the god simply turns his back and phases through the wall while saying, "He's not one of mine. Deal with him yourself." So as we see, SCP-343's reality bending powers didn't prove useful, as the entity chose to ignore 682. But what if we could convince the god to help us and actually try to terminate the lizard? Can he get the job done? To begin with, the fact that both SCPs were unable to see each other is problematic, because 343 would need to see where 682 is in order to harm it. However, 343 is a very powerful reality bender, so he should definitely be able to alter the reality around him in such a way so that he can see and interact with SCP-682. Alright, we've convinced the god to help us, and he is standing in front of 682 once again, but now ready to fight. What happens? Well, the reptile will charge once again, but this time aiming to hit the god. However, the man passed through the reptile before without taking any damage, so he can do it again. Not to mention that SCP-343 can teleport, so he will easily avoid 682's attack, and the reptile will strike the air, visibly confused as to what just happened. In the meantime, the god will have positioned itself behind the reptile and will likely attack using its anomalous properties. We don't know exactly what SCP-343 is capable of, because the man has never fought anything in the SCP Wiki, but given his reality-bending powers, he can likely pick things up and throw them using telekinesis, materialize physical weapons and wield them with great force, or attack using a wave of directed energy. As such, 343 will likely grab 682 using telekinesis and launch it at the wall at incredible speed. This will be a heavy impact, and the reptile will be severely disorientated, but it won't be enough. SCP-682 will recover, roar and charge at the man a second time. But once again, SCP-343 will use its reality-bending powers to avoid the strike, and seeing as the last method of attack proved ineffective, he will try something else. The god will probably materialize a weapon of some sort and strike 682 with incredible power. However, the reptile survived multiple attacks from the Gate Guardian, a godlike entity that usually destroys everything instantly using its sword. This means that 682 will survive 343's strike, albeit heavily injured, and after another attack or two, SCP-682 will be missing most of its limbs and will be unable to move, just like during its encounter with the Gate Guardian. As such, SCP-343 will likely try to finish 682 off. However, we must not forget that the reptile can regenerate very quickly, so consecutive attacks using a weapon, even from a god, likely won't be enough. As such, 343 will resort to the last weapon in its arsenal, a direct energy strike, such as a beam of plasma. This sort of attack is very destructive, and the god will probably vaporize a large amount of 682's body right away, and this sort of attack is instant, giving the reptile zero time to regenerate. So does this mean that SCP-682 will be terminated forever? Well, not necessarily. This is because 682 has shown the ability to regenerate after losing practically all of its body mass. For example, when placed inside an SCP chamber, which can literally alter the laws of physics, the reptile lost more than 99% of its body, but still survived. This means that SCP-682 can probably survive and regenerate, even if only a single atom from its body survived. As such, even if 343 vaporizes 682's entire body, the reptile will regenerate from the remaining smoke, from the blood on the walls, or even from the pool of sweat and saliva that 682 left on the floor before it entered the testing chamber. And in order to make sure that SCP-682 682 will not regenerate, 343 would need to locate and destroy every single atom the reptile has ever left, something which is virtually impossible. Not to mention that in the beginning, we assumed that SCP-343 is a real god that can send waves of plasma, use telekinesis, and so on. And for various reasons, many people believe that 343 isn't a real god, and is instead a weak reality bender who pretends to be omnipotent. As such, SCP-682 will survive, so if we want to get rid of the reptile, we will have to come up with something else. So what do you think? Is SCP-343 a real god? And can we convince him to terminate 682? And if we do, can he get the job done? Let us know in the comments. Please leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos.